6 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on January 18, 2022, the committee is meeting on its study of the traceability of fish and seafood products. This meeting, of course, is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Proceedings are available via the House of Commons website, and so you are aware the webcast shows the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English or French. Please inform me immediately if interpretation is lost, and we'll ensure it is restored before resuming the meeting. The raised hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used if you wish to speak or alert the chair. But again, if you're in the room, wave, shout, do something to get my attention. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. And for those by video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself before speaking. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. I now, of course, would like to welcome our witnesses for today. From the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, we have Mr. Adam Burns, no stranger to this particular committee, Senior Director, Pacific Salmon Strategy Initiative, Pacific Region. And from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, we have Tammy Switusha, Executive Director, Food Safety and Consumer Protection Directorate, and Kathy Twardek, Senior Director, Food Program Integration Division. Before I go to the witnesses' opening statement, I will remind members that when you're asking a question, it's much easier if you identify who the question is to. I did say that at the last meeting, but sometimes a question gets asked and everybody is just kind of staring in space, wondering who the question is headed for. So if you could keep that in mind. And as well, I now see Dr. Hetty Fry has joined us, subbing in for Mr. Cormier. So now on to our witnesses. We'll now go to...
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Arnold has his hand raised.
Just a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Arnold.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair. I believe you mentioned Mr. Adam Burns has a role with the Pacific Strategic Salmon Initiative. Could you repeat that? It's not in the notice of meeting that we received.
Okay. Adam Burns, Senior Director, Pacific Salmon Strategy Initiative, Pacific Region. That's the information I have now. I see Mr. Burns has his hand up to respond. Maybe it's got the wrong thing here.
Unfortunately, Chair, you were provided the wrong information there. I apologize. I'm the Director General of Fisheries Resource Management based at National Headquarters in Ottawa.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Burns. All right, now we'll go to our presentation by witnesses for 5 minutes or less. And I believe, Mr. Burns, you can go first.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm here to speak at the committee's request related to the Catch Certification Office and the functions that DFO serves in that manner. The Canadian seafood industry has undergone significant developments in the area of traceability over recent years. Much of this development has been largely driven by various market access requirements, many in the form of barriers to trade resulting from requirements of other countries. Other incentives that have led to developments in this area are purely consumer and market driven, such as eco-labeling. Le programme de certification des captures.
DFO's Catch Certification Program is an example of how Canada has adapted to respond to ever-evolving market access requirements, which require components of product traceability from Canadian seafood export products.
The European Union introduced a new regulation which established market access measures as a means to prevent, deter, and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated, or IUU, fishing. The first regulation of its kind, the EU IUU regulation, requires all exporting countries of fish and seafood products to provide catch certificates on a consignment basis, which attest to the legality of the products as determined by the competent authority, which is the authority of the flag state that manages and enables harvest activities. The EU's catch certification scheme is intended to improve traceability of most fish and seafood products destined for EU markets and at all stages of the production chain. The catch certification program was created in 2010 to position the Canadian industry to be able to respond to international rules such as the EU IUU regulation and to support Canada's role in preventing, deterring, and eliminating IUU fishing. Concern for the environment is translated into requirements for evidence through product traceability along the entire value chain that fish and seafood are caught legally and in an environmentally sustainable manner. The onus of this proof with supporting evidence is now on the exporting fish and seafood industry and the government departments that regulate and enable their activities. Depuis 2010, le programme de
Since 2010, DFO's catch certification program has responded to multiple and other international requirements for catch certification, and they currently provide certification for exports destined to the EU, the United Kingdom, Ukraine, Japan, and Chile. They are preparing for implementation of catch certification requirements for additional export markets, including Thailand, Indonesia, and Serbia.
Participation in the catch certification program is voluntary and market-driven, which means that entire sectors of the Canadian fish and seafood industry have not participated in this program. The program only certifies fisheries products for which it is required based on foreign requirements, and to date, this only includes products derived from marine wild capture fisheries. Having fisheries product certified by DFO is not required under Canadian legislation, but companies choose to participate in the certification process based on what markets they are targeting for their product. The programme de certification des captures n'offre aucun.
The certification program doesn't offer validity to foreign products. For imported products, Canadian importers need to reserve certification from the country of origin. The country can then deliver certificates for exports so that the product will go through the Canadian supply chain and will be certified by the country of origin.
The tools necessary for Canadian industry to obtain electronic certification for their export product, DFO does not prescribe the mechanisms by which industry physically track the product while it is in their custody. Industry must remain proactive in developing and maintaining their own tracking systems to allow them to accurately identify and differentiate between batches of products, and using this tracking system, accurately report in the fisheries certificate system from where product was received and to who it will be sold. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. A little bit of time left, which is always appreciated. We now go to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and I believe Tammy Swatusa is going to speak on behalf of that group.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with committee members today on seafood traceability. My name is Tammy Swatuka, and I'm the Executive Director in the Policy and Programs Branch at the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I am addressing you from Ottawa on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. I will address the committee in English, but I invite members to raise their questions or share their comments in the official language of their choice. I have my colleague Kathy Twarduk here with me today. She is the Acting Director in Policy and Programs Branch. Mr. Chair, today I'm going to provide an overview of seafood traceability in the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's regulatory framework, tell you about the agency's work to prevent fish mislabeling, and ongoing work with respect to the Minister of Health's 2019 mandate commitment for boat-to-plate traceability. Canada is recognized as having one of the best food safety systems in the world and has implemented robust food safety traceability requirements under the Safe Food for Canadian Regulations, or SFCR, which came into force on January 15, 2019. Traceability requirements under SFCR support food safety in Canada and apply to businesses, including fish and seafood processors who import, export, or trade within Canada. These requirements are consistent with standards set by the international food standard setting body, Codex Alimentarius. There are two main components to traceability: document and labeling requirements. The SFCR requires food businesses that import, export, or trade within Canada to keep records that allow a food to be traced one step back and one step forward to the point of retail. This enables faster removal of unsafe food from the market during a food safety investigation or recall and fraud-related investigations. For labeling, most consumer prepackaged foods in Canada, including seafood products, must have a label with information necessary for public health or consumer protection, such as the common name, name and place of business, and lot code or unique identifier. Companies can also voluntarily add information such as the scientific name, the location of catch, or the type of fishing gear used to the label. All information must be truthful and not misleading. There is growing global attention on seafood mislabeling and misrepresentation. Food safety and consumer protection are Government of Canada priorities, and I'd like to share how CFIA works to protect health and safety of Canadians when it comes to seafood misrepresentation. CFIA verifies labeling and species authenticity of fish products as part of its regular compliance, monitoring, and inspection activities. Additionally, Budget 2019 introduced a food policy for Canada that included an investment of $24.4 million over 5 years for the CFIA to expand its capacity to detect and take action against food fraud. As part of the Food Fraud Initiative in 2019-20, CFIA prioritized and carried out inspections targeting fish mislabeling and substitution. CFIA sampled and tested fish using DNA analysis, collected at retail stores, collected at manufacturers and importers, and found that 92% of the samples were correctly labeled. The CFIA took appropriate action on all unsatisfactory results. It's important to note that compliance is ultimately the responsibility of companies. To promote compliance, CFIA works with industry and provides various compliance tools, such as the CFIA fish list that links fish species to common names, and the industry labeling tool. Mr. Chair, I'd like to talk about the boat-to-plate traceability for fish and seafood, which was included in the Minister of Health's mandate letter in 2019. CFIA is leading this work in collaboration with Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada. To date, CFIA, DFO, and AAFC have engaged extensively with stakeholders to gather information and perspectives related to seafood traceability and labeling in Canada. An online 120-day consultation was launched in August 2021 to seek the views of stakeholders on various aspects of boat-to-plate traceability. Feedback has been received from respondents, and the analysis is currently underway. The CFIA will publish a What We Heard report this spring. In conclusion, Canada has a robust regulatory foundation and inspection system that supports food safety and consumer protection. The CFIA values engagement and collaboration to continuously improve and address issues related to seafood traceling and mislabeling. Once again, I thank you for this opportunity and look forward to your questions.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to our first round of questioning for 6 minutes or less. Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for being the lead off to this important study. In 2019, the Executive Director of the Food Safety and Consumer Protection Directorate of CFIA, in speaking to the Safe Food Canadian regulation, said that we require all businesses, including importers, to be licensed, have traceability records in place, and have a preventative control program. And this is how businesses are ensuring that its labels are truthful and not misleading. And you've also said in your testimony that in your audits you found that 92% of the food labeling you found in seafood is correctly labeled. So I made a trip to the grocery store, my weekly trip, to note and see what is on some of the seafood that's available in the store. So I'd like your opinion on some of these. I can share with the committee, if you want, the photos of some of the products at the appropriate time. I'd like you to please define for me what organic Atlantic salmon means.
Thank you. I'm sorry, there's quite a bit of feedback here. I'll try again. Thank you for your question. Mr. Chair, not seeing the actual label itself, I will try my best to provide the answer. In Canada, the food safety requirements, the Safe Food for Canadian regulations, require that most prepackaged food be labeled with specific information to help consumers make informed purchasing decisions. And this is consistent across all foods. And they have to include the common name of the food, the ingredients, nutrition information, best before date, net quantity, and the company name and address. Other labels, such as organic and other claims, are on a voluntary basis. And
appreciate that. And I only have limited time, sorry. So I'll ask you about a couple more definitions. So I guess we don't know what that is. That's a definition created by the company, not by the government. So how about Pacific salmon prepared in Canada?
Thank you very much. Food must be labeled with the origin of the food, and that's required in our regulation. The use of the word Pacific and other denominators like that or originators like that is, of course, voluntary and not prescribed within our regulations. That information can be applied as long as it's truthful and not misleading.
Pacific's a big ocean, so we're not sure where it's coming from, is what you're telling us. Haddock, made in Canada from domestic and imported products. I don't know how you make haddock from domestic and imported products, but I wonder if you could clarify that labeling.
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the product that you're referring to, so it's difficult for me to answer that question.
Well, this took me about 10 minutes at the grocery store, so I presume the inspections that you said were 92% accurate would have looked at some of these things. Shrimp rings. We all know shrimp rings are very popular. A lot of people get them. A lot of them in the grocery store, a lot of different brands. One of the most famous brands we know at a big store here, its labeling says product of Vietnam. So what does product of Vietnam mean? Is it caught, processed, shipped? What is it? What does product of Vietnam mean?
The requirements with respect to labeling of country of origin have the country where the food undergoes the last substantial processing step that changes the nature of the food. And this is consistent with the international standards set by Codex Alimentarius. So when you see products that indicate, and most foods in Canada must have a country of origin claim on their product if those goods are imported. So
Vietnam doesn't tell me where it was caught. Sorry, I only have limited time. Product of Vietnam doesn't tell me where it was caught, where it was processed. So you can see why consumers are confused. Obviously, if we're only trying to strive to meet international standards, we're not actually protecting our consumers and doing what's right. You have mentioned that in your testimony that we only cover one step back and one step forward. That doesn't seem like plate to or ocean to plate traceability. Can you tell me why we don't know more than one step back when something arrives in Canada, what we're receiving and what Canadians are eating?
Thank you for the question. The rules around traceability pertain to food safety and not necessarily the method of catch or where, in fact, that location of catch was taken. And the traceability requirements in the Safe Food for Canadian regulations were quite clear that each exchange of product, of food, along the supply chain must keep documentation records as to who received the food and where the food came from. And while we don't prescribe how that's done, we know from experience that the CFIA and in our verification of industry's compliance with traceability, these records are very closely tied along the supply chain up until retail.
So the answer is no, you don't know what any of these products mean.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Your time is up. Just a quick reminder to those in the room asking questions, be sure your mic is off before a witness or anybody else tries to respond, because as someone who's doing it hybridly, I'm getting a lot of feedback as well. If I key up my mic and there's a mic on in the room, so try and be a little bit more conscious to that, please. It'll make for a much smoother meeting. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 6 minutes or less, please.
Chair, and my questions are directed to CFIA. Either one can answer. And I want to follow up on the line of questioning from Mr. Perkins. Under your notes, you state CFIA verifies labeling and species authenticity of fish products. So going to the case of the product that Mr. Perkins identified, how would that have been labeled by CFIA without knowing exactly where the origin of the product was? The reference was haddock, and then something else may be in it. So how would a label like that be approved in Canada?
Thank you for the question. And I believe you indicated that how would CFIA label the product? It's up to the company responsible for producing or selling that product to make sure my
question was CFIA verifies the labeling and species authenticity. So let me go to the question this way. When you referenced 92% of the samples that you analyzed were labeled correctly, what would 92% of the samples you monitored represent in the overall seafood that would be available? Was it 92% of 5% of the product, or was it 92% of 100%? Because statistics are statistics, but they tell a different story. So could you elaborate?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for allowing me to elaborate on that particular study. That particular study was done as part of our fraud initiative to gather more intelligence with respect to the extent and scope of misrepresentation in Canada. And we targeted specific species in this study. So we looked at 9 different species that we knew had a history of misrepresentation in the marketplace. And while that's not fully representative of the entire fish and seafood product availability in Canada, it did give us a sense of the amount, generally speaking, of the misrepresentation. So when we point to the 92% compliance or the 8% non-compliance, that's specific to that study and the parameters of that study, and not necessarily representative of the entire marketplace and the entire supply chain. We know through our studies, however, that along the supply chain, the rate of compliance is very high at the production and processing stage. And as you get further down the supply chain into retail and the restaurant level, then the level of non-compliance is higher than that. So, you know, we appreciate the questions here, and it's important to understand the parameters under which this study was undertaken, because the methodology was quite specific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You targeted those areas that had a history of misrepresentation or species. Could you advise the committee of what species they fall under, or what category?
Yes, we targeted butterfish, cod, halibut, kingfish, sea bass, snapper, red and other, sole, tuna, and yellowtail. And as I said, these are known to have a higher likelihood of being misrepresented in the marketplace.
Curious, how would they be misrepresented?
In this study,
yes,
thank you. In this study in particular, the ability to identify something as being misrepresented was based on the regulatory requirements and the fact that these common names did not match with those on our fish list, which matches the scientific name with the common name. So in this instance, it was specific to verifying whether our guidance that we provide to industry was being followed with respect to the scientific names and the common names.
There have been charges laid as a result of the investigation on the 8% that were labeled incorrectly?
We took follow-up action, enforcement action on all of the non-compliances, and the actions that we undertook ranged from letters of non-compliance, fines, there were other enforcement actions, and so all of those were followed up by the Canadian
misrepresentation of
Agency.
Sorry, in the misrepresentation and the labeling, was the origin in Canada or from outside the country of the product that was misrepresented on the label? Where you identify, if you don't have the information, if you could provide it to the committee, I would like to know of those that were not in compliance, that were mislabeled. Was the product, did it originate in Canada? Was it caught in Canada, processed in Canada, or did it enter Canada? If you could provide that information, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I have the information now. If you allow me to provide that, thank you.
Running out of time.
The unsatisfactory results that we discovered as part of this surveillance study revealed that there were about around 12% that were misrepresented in grocery stores, and that includes fish that's packaged at the fishmonger itself within the grocery store, followed by a 5% rate for imported products and a 4% by domestic processors.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to Madame Desbiens for 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very pleased to work on this study on traceability and mislabeling of seafood. So I'm very, my father was a fisherman, and so I'd like to just tell you he liked to buy products, of course, that came from Matane, a local product. And once one time the distributor came to say, yes, this is product of Quebec. It was fished in the Saint Laurent. Once he opened the box, it said Russian cod in it. And if you could have seen it, he threw out this cod. He was really very upset. So over the last federal consultation on traceability from the ship to the table, it was shown that there was 40% of product that was mislabeled, both for retailers and also in the restaurant business. So there's this. How do you explain this gap? I'm sorry, I was speaking very quickly. I'm sorry for the interpreters.
Not at all. Thank you very much for the question. And I believe you're referring to the studies that were conducted by non-governmental organizations such as Sea Choice and Oceana. Is that correct? Yes, I mean, it's certainly understandable that there may be questions with respect to the differences in the amount of misrepresentation or non-compliance that's seen in both studies. And first, I would like to point out that it's important to keep in mind that the methodology that was used for both studies, while I don't have information on how those studies were conducted, what their sampling size was, what their overall target was. These are very important parameters to keep in mind. And so how the sampling was designed can influence the results. The CFIA does understand that the samples that were collected by Oceana and others were taken from restaurants as well as retail, whereas the CFIA samples were collected from retail stores, but also at the domestic processing and at the importing level. So we focused our work in the upstream part of the supply chain, while Oceana and others focus their efforts at the other end of the supply chain. So you can see that there could also be some differences there. How they also determine noncompliance needs to be understood. And while I don't have that information from the CFIA's perspective, the noncompliance was based on our regulatory requirements in comparison to our guidance in the fish list. There may have also been different testing used. We don't know what testing methods were used in all those studies, though the use of DNA testing is currently sort of the gold star that many do use. And so it's important from a regulatory perspective to ensure that we're comparing apples to apples. Thank you.
Merci, c'est très...
Thank you. That's very interesting. That means that there could be quite a gap between the department study and what's done in the field. So is the issue that you really can't compare the two in a broader study and to follow the whole chain, a supply chain?
We've really valued from Oceana and Sea Choice's studies, and we've met with them several times over the past several years to further understand their research, to look at their data. And we have worked with them to update and change a lot of the guidance that we have available to stakeholders to make sure that they use the labeling guidance properly. So, you know, there has been quite a bit of collaboration between Oceana, Sea Choice, universities, and other academic studies, because the problem of fish representation in Canada really is a collective effort, and we need to all work together as we all collect data and understand the problem further to share that information. And I'm pleased to say that we've been doing that quite regularly. Oceana has been very forthcoming in sharing their information, and we benefit from that, and vice versa as well. So there is a good amount of collaboration, ensuring that we cover those gaps. While it's not perfect, you may not be aware. However, it's the responsibility of municipalities and provincial governments to undertake that level of surveillance in restaurants. CFI doesn't have the authority to be there, and that's why working with all of our partners helps us develop the full story.
Thank you for that. We'll now go on to Ms. Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to those who have brought forward information today. I appreciate this information. Now, I had just one moment. Lost my point. I'll get right to the questions, but thank you for the witnesses who have come here today. Some of the questions that I asked were very similar to Madame Desbien's questions, and I wanted to build off some of those. We saw in a 2020 study from Oceana and UBC Fisheries Economics Research Unit that highlighted our poorly regulated supply chains is accounting for an estimated loss for Canadian fishers of about $379 million and $93.8 million in lost tax revenue. And I'm wondering why we're not taking more action to ensure our fishers aren't being undercut by illegal inferior products.
I don't believe that that question falls within CFIA's mandate, so I don't know whether my colleague from Fisheries and Oceans has a response to that.
So if I understand the member's question correctly, it relates to products which are being imported into Canada. I believe, is my understanding of your question, that are incorrectly identified as a particular product, and so DFO's jurisdiction relates to the harvest of Canadian fish and seafood, and we do not regulate the importation of seafood products into Canada.
Thank you. Currently, we are seeing the country of origin labeling standard only requiring that products be labeled with their last place of transformation rather than their actual origin. I wanted to ask if that was correct, and if a consumer buys a seafood product labeled, for example, product of the United States, we know that for example, the example I was given that if a fish was caught in China and then shipped to the United States, breaded in the United States, then it's labeled as a product of the United States. And I'm wondering if you can confirm that this information is correct, and if you have any thoughts around how to best move forward with this information.
Thanks very much for the question, and you are correct. Codex Alimentarius standard, which many countries follow, the EU, the United States, Canada included, with respect to country of origin, and that declaration on a label signifies where the food underwent the last substantial processing step. Now, as part of this inquiry into the country of origin, it's important, and I'd like to share that CFIA undertook significant consultation over the last 5 years to modernize our food labeling requirements. And country of origin was one area where we undertook quite a bit of study, and we were prepared and are still looking at making future regulatory changes in that area. The regulatory process has been somewhat delayed because of the COVID pandemic, but it is an area that we have received quite a bit of feedback on, and we'll continue pursuing as part of our ongoing look to modernizing our labels.
Thank you very much. I apologize. I have so many questions I want to ask. I'm letting myself get too excited about the questions, but I appreciate that information. One thing that's come up is an area that people that I'm hearing from that there's a struggle around is how we label fish with a common name. So the government has a mandate to lay out a better boat to plate process, but why are we letting multiple species get labeled as the same fish? So for example, I'm learning that common names are often used to identify seafood products and that they're too broad, making it difficult for consumers to understand what they're getting. Sole or snapper, for example, are common names that have a huge subspecies that qualify under that name, which we can see can cause issues in many, many different ways. Saying that seafood is sole when in fact it is another species, it cheats us all. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little further.
Thanks very much, and you are correct. Keeping a list of common names is a tool that many countries around the world use to help food processors and production companies ensure that they label the product accurately. And in many instances, a scientific name can carry various common names. So it is a challenge to continuously keep that information up to date. But that's why our partnerships with academia, with non-government organization has been so important as of late to make sure that we are providing the best information to industry to keep their labels accurate. But I'll remind the member that it is industry's responsibility, that it is companies' responsibility to make sure that the labels they put on their products are truthful and not misleading. And CFIA will take action if there is an issue in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. I think.
Thank you, Ms. Barron.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Barron. Your 6 minutes are up. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the witnesses and Madame Debienne for putting this study forward. I think it's of great value to Canadian consumers and Canadian fish harvesters. Ms. Switchtaw or your colleague there, developing seafood traceability was included in the mandate letters of 3 ministers, Agriculture, Health, and Fisheries, over 2 years ago. Could you provide us what progress had been made since then?
Thank you. I'd be pleased to answer that question. Following the 2019 mandate commitment to the Minister of Health, the CFIA, along with Department of Fishery and Oceans and Agriculture and Agri-Food, began our engagement with stakeholders, with academia, with non-government organizations to get a better understanding of the issue. And we spent a bit of time undergoing discussions to further our knowledge. And then last year, in 2021, in partnership with those other departments, we launched an official consultation along with a discussion paper to gather consumer and industry's feedback on 3 areas related to fish traceability, because this issue covers the mandate of all 3 departments. CFIA's role pertains to food safety, whereas for Department of Fisheries and Oceans, we had some questions related to sustainability, and for Agriculture and Agri-Food, there were some points related to trade and market access and branding of Canadian products. Our consultation concluded just at the end of 2021. And we're currently analyzing the feedback that received from that consultation.
Good.
And we hope to be able to...
Thank you. Under current Canadian traceability standards, you think you've indicated that not all seafood is tracked under that, but the seafood that is tracked, are there digital records of point of origin, species, harvest method, and to verify that seafood was legally caught, and are they maintained all the way through the supply chain?
I believe questions with respect to catch and sustainability falls for my colleague.
Chair, I can respond to that from DFO's perspective and our jurisdiction, which is up to the wharf, and certainly. We have a robust enforcement regime that's in place to ensure that harvesters are operating within the authority of their license, and so they would only be authorized to harvest specific species which they are authorized to harvest, and our fisheries officers would be enforcing those conditions of license.
Okay, thank you. Developing this program is complex initiative involving multiple government departments and agencies. How is the development being coordinated between those government entities, and how closely have the different departments been working together on the traceability file since receiving the mandate in 2019?
I could say that there's been good collaboration between the 3 departments during our investigative and consultation period. We organized and participated collaboratively in various stakeholder meetings prior to the pandemic. We held a few rounds of face-to-face meetings, and then during the pandemic have had joint meetings with various stakeholders. The development of the consultation paper and the analysis of the feedback has also been done in close collaboration between all 3. And the report that will be published will be under the banner of all 3 departments.
Okay, thank you. What is the timeline for getting boat-to-plate traceability in place, or at least developing a framework for it?
We will be publishing a What We Heard report, as I mentioned earlier, in the spring of this year, whereby we'll be looking and determining whether there was a consensus from Canadians, from consumers and industry and others with respect to the approach. There are various options available, both regulatory and non-regulatory. And while there was no real consensus from some of the early feedback that we got from Canadians, I think they're mainly concerned about making sure that the fish and seafood that they're eating is safe to eat. We are exploring, but have not yet landed on specific options, whether regulatory or non-regulatory. industry, I think, is conscious of additional regulatory burden that they might face. So I think the exploration of non-regulatory opportunities to put into place a framework are available. But I'd like to remind the member that we already have very good food safety traceability measures in Canada. And the expansion of that will need to be taken into close consideration with our mandate and that of our partners as well.
Okay,
But our work to date.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Your time is up. Gone a bit over, actually. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. When we deal with traceability, Ms. Swatucha, it seems that the primary focus of the CFIA is on food safety. What makes a food unsafe, particularly when it comes to fish?
Thank you very much for the question, and you're absolutely correct. Our focus from a traceability perspective is on food safety and ensuring that when a food is prepared, manufactured, labeled, packaged, and put up for trade in Canada, or imported or exported, that it meets food safety requirements. So that means that it's prepared in conditions that are hygienic, that there is no risks of contamination, whether they be microbiological or chemical, that producers follow all the food safety rules that are laid out in our regulations, and
I know that there's a very long answer here, ma'am, and I don't really have time for long answers, but I get the picture. If somebody presents a truckload of fish caught in the Wabigoon River, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but mercury contamination is a pretty big deal up in that Dryden area. Would anybody know? Would anybody check for mercury contamination on a fish caught in Canada or anywhere in the world?
Well, CFIA does extensive testing on an annual basis on fish products. We test approximately 4,000 samples every year for chemical contaminants as well as microbiological. So we have a fairly robust surveillance program that tells us if fish is safe to eat in Canada.
Both domestically caught and imported?
Yes,
okay.
That is correct.
Now, when we deal with traceability, traceability should be, I suppose, a process by which we look for fraud, okay? Somebody's passing turbot off as halibut, let's say, okay? Then there's unfair competition. You know, are there situations where, you know, our market is being damaged because somebody somewhere else is literally scooping everything up off the ocean and, you know, very, very poor fishing habits, unsustainable fishing habits. So there's the destruction piece of that. And then there's fish laundering, okay? So a species at risk caught in one part of the world passes through maybe one or two processes here in North America, and we think it's just ducky. It's just fine. But it doesn't sound like anybody's in a position to really follow that. Is that true?
The CFIA has a mandate for ensuring that food that is imported into Canada or food that's produced here is safe to eat. When it comes to catch practices or other issues that you mentioned, we don't have the mandate, but we are.
Who does have a mandate there, ma'am? Who does? Who has the mandate in Canada?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm not in a position to answer that question. I'm not.
No, and I understand that, but I just needed to know. This is not you know, an indictment of CFIA, but if you knew, it would be helpful for us to know. Do you know, though, once a fish is caught, and particularly if it's caught offshore, do you know how many hands, how many processes, how many shipping legs it goes through before it ends up in my local grocery store? Yes.
Not offhand, but I can answer in saying that the fish supply chain is a complex one, and the path that's taken in the supply chain from the time it's caught to the time it lands on a consumer's plate could go through many hands. It depends where it originates from, of course, but it is a very complex supply chain. I agree with you.
So that suggests then that the one step back review is woefully inadequate of keeping in touch. I mean, has there ever been any serious audit of a whole supply chain to in fact see where something that, as I say, ends up in the fishmonger's section of our grocery store, where it actually came from and how many times it crossed the ocean going back and forth to various processors? Has ever an audit been done to your knowledge? And again, this isn't an indictment of you if you don't know.
Well, our regular surveillance activities and our verification activities demonstrate that there's a very high level of compliance. Fish has been regulated in Canada for quite a long time, even before the Safe Food for Canadian regulations came into being in 2019. And probably one of the most stringent in terms of all the foods out there. So while I can't speak for other departments, I can certainly reassure you that fish is highly verified by the CFIA for its food safety risks, and we will follow up on investigations as required when that intelligence or if complaints are made to CFIA.
Okay, ma'am, it occurs that the time that we have...
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Time is up, but don't be long going when you're having fun. We now go to Madame Debienne for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is very interesting. Thank you very, very much for being here. So if we come back to the last consultation that there was between the different entities that surveil fish, we may note that the European Union and the United States have better methods for looking into the traceability of seafood. So why is it that Canada can't really catch up? Why are we not able to go further with the consultation process?
I can speak from the food safety perspective, and both the United States and the EU and Canada all have very similar food safety traceability requirements. But I do understand that their work related to fish and seafood traceability specifically, and their programs for those were done with the objective of sustainability and conservation under those mandates. So from CFI's perspective, I think we are very much on par with the EU and the United States in ensuring that for food safety purposes, food can be traced back to its origins if there's a foodborne illness or if there's a fraud investigation. And as the EU and the US do, we all follow international standards when it comes to document maintenance and traceability for the purposes of food safety investigations.
Merci.
Thank you. You were saying earlier that your work is broken down and that there's also the provinces and the municipalities that have control. So I wonder, how can the municipality deal with cod coming from Russia? So where are the limits? Is it through MAPAC in Quebec, or what? How does it work?
We work really closely with all of our provincial and territorial colleagues, especially MAPAC. That's one example whereby the CFIA does work closely with MAPAC, who follows up within the province of Quebec to verify local establishments and work with the municipalities. Food safety has a multiple jurisdiction responsibility, and we work very closely with all levels to ensure that consumers are protected from end to end on the supply chain.
Thank you, Madame Debienne. Merci. We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Following up from my previous question, and I believe these would be directed at Ms. Swituka. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the question that I have is around the industry. You know, many in the industry want to build increased accountability and a responsible supply chain. There's environmental, economical, and health reasons to do so, which we are all aware of. But most don't want to sell a bad product. There's unfortunately, however, no way for them to know. And I'm wondering if, beyond consultation, how we're bringing together partners to collaborate and find solutions around this issue.
I can certainly speak from the food safety perspective to your question. And we collaborate and engage with the food industry on a regular basis. Even when we're not in a consultation, whether it's on a policy or on regulations, their input and feedback is something that we use all the time. So I'm not sure that I can answer your question from the perspective of sustainability and environmental reasons, but from a health and safety perspective, industry is very committed to ensuring that they sell a safe product, and the high compliance rates in Canada can point to that.
Okay.
But
Sorry, I just want to make sure I get my other question, and I appreciate that information. Thank you. You also mentioned that companies can voluntarily add information to the labels, such as the scientific name, location of catch, or the type of fishing gear used. And I'm wondering, you also said all this information must be truthful and not misleading. We know the global supply chains are incredibly opaque and complicated. And I'm wondering, would most importers even have access to this information? Even if they wanted to label the product with more details, aren't they just opening themselves up to increased liability by doing so?
One of the requirements in the regulations requires that every food processor and manufacturer have a preventative control plan. And that plan also includes all of their information related to how they're labeling their product. So it is their responsibility under the law to make sure that they can demonstrate that they are labeling their products in a truthful and not misleading way. And as importers, the new law, which is a new set of it's a new toolkit that's been given, has very specific requirements as to what they must have in enabling compliance. So it ultimately rests upon them to ensure that whatever they're importing, they work with their supplier to make sure that that information is accurately displayed on the label and it's safe to eat in Canada.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Small for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to Mr. Burns with regards to DFO's catch certification program, and I reference your remarks regarding concern for fish caught in an environmentally sustainable manner. Determining the degree of environmental sustainability of certain seafood must be quite the process. You rely on science, stakeholder input, and input by ENGOs to formulate what sustainability means. So, Mr. Burns, can you tell me what percentage of input on the environmentally sustainability label comes from ENGOs?
Thanks, Chair. And with respect to the comment I made in my opening remarks around environmental sustainability, I was speaking of the foreign countries that have imposed these certification requirements. And the requirements speak specifically to the flag state certifying that the products are regulated. And so these certifications do not delve deeper into an individual flag state's regulation of the fishery to make a determination whether that regulation achieves sustainability. So that was the origin of the comments that I made there. And so there is no assessment beyond, in the case of, for example, the EU certification, Canada needs to certify as the flag state that product has come from a regulated fishery, which all Canadian fisheries are regulated.
I'll tell you what led me to this. In Atlantic Canada, a lot of attention is being paid to right whale protection, of course, is very important. How much consideration is given to stakeholders like fish harvesters, for example, when braking mechanisms are now required for fishing gear haul-up lines, and fishers say this will result in lines often breaking needlessly, and fishing gear being unretrievable and resulting in ghost fishing gear. Mr. Byrne, how wise is forcing this braking mechanism requirement on fishermen in terms of determining sustainability labeling if we're going to leave fishing gear on the bottom and in areas where right whales aren't even prevalent? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, and that is indeed within the area of my responsibility as well, so I can speak to that. There is not currently a requirement for breaking points in the lines for fixed gear fisheries, crab and lobster primarily. Those requirements are not yet in place. The minister has indicated that whale safe gear requirements will be in effect in licenses issued as of January 1st, 2023, but we're currently engaged in significant consultation with the fishing industry, to explore the unique nature of the particulars of individual fisheries and which types of whale safe gear contrivances would be most appropriate in those fisheries. We're engaged in trials of various types of gear configurations that may generate a greater degree of whale safeness, if that's a word, for the gear. And so at this time, those requirements are not yet in place, and indeed we are working directly with the fishing industry to try to find ways to avoid exactly those issues. And that's why in 2020, when the department hosted a Gear Innovation Summit in Halifax just before the pandemic, it was focused on two things: whale safe gear and ghost gear, because we know that we need to address both of those issues simultaneously, and are looking to avoid to the maximum extent possible unintended consequences from whale safe gear requirements.
In your opinion, on the east, northeast, and Labrador coast and Newfoundland region, where right whales are known to be very infrequent visitors, do you think being practical has a role to play in sustainable aspect of labeling?
So I'm not sure that I follow the question, sorry, in terms of the link to sustainable labeling.
Thank you. Well, what I meant was, do you think it's, how much onus do you put on practicality in terms of, number one, where right whales are prevalent, and number two, how much fishing gear could be left on the bottom and continue fishing because of this braking technology. And it's very important, it's very timely, and fishers in my riding, in my province, are very concerned about this.
Okay, Mr. Burns, if you could provide an answer in writing, it would be more appropriate because it's gone well over time and the time allotted for the questioning. So we'll go on now to Mr. Hanley for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much to both presenters for the question. Sorry, I got caught off guard. I thought I was coming in a later round. But first of all, I think for Mr. Burns, given that this was in 3 mandate letters in 2019, at the boat to plate requirement, and this is clearly a work in progress. and yet is not in the 2021 mandate letters that I can see anyway. I wanted you to talk to the how much of a priority this is seen to carry on with this work amongst your many other priorities.
I can begin, although I will note that CFIA, while DFO is actively engaged in this work, CFIA is leading on this, and certainly, I can say that the work continues. We've just wrapped up consultation with stakeholders related to the boat to plate element, and my colleagues from CFIA can probably speak better to next steps moving forward on that.
Thank you. I can certainly follow up on that question. While the boat to plate traceability item was not listed in the Minister of Health's latest mandate letter, it very much falls within CFIA's priority under the food policy and the funding that we've received with respect to food fraud. So we continue to undertake our work to prevent, detect fraud in Canada, which includes fish and seafood, but also focuses on many other foods that are subject to fraud and misrepresentation in Canada. And as my colleague noted, we continue to analyze the feedback from the consultation, and we'll be reporting on that in the spring.
Thank you very much. Secondly, back to Mr. Burns, I noted in your presentation that you talk about the voluntary and market-driven industry participation in the catch certification program, and that entire sectors of the Canadian fish and seafood industry have not participated in the program. And I just wonder if you could elaborate on give me a bit of a deeper understanding of that and the significance of that.
Thanks for the question. And what I was referring to there is the catch certification office is in place to respond to other countries' import requirements related to certification that seafood products are not IUU. And so only those sectors of the fishery that export to countries that require such certificates participate in the program. Although given the EU and other significant markets now require it, I would say that essentially all of the marine wild capture fishery is participating. I certainly wouldn't want the committee to think that every harvester is engaged in this, but there would be significant exports from most of our significant fisheries that would be going to third countries that require this certification. So the participation rate would be very high, but it's not a mandatory certification in the sense that it is not currently part of any sort of Canadian traceability system.
Thank you. And if I have time for another question for Ms. Sutucha, I'm still kind of grappling and I think it reflects Madame de Bien's question around the gap between the upstream study and the downstream study and the difference there and the implications for the consumer. So I wonder if you can maybe help me with sort of the next steps to address that kind of global picture of really, when it comes to the consumer level, it's that 50% discrepancy or 40-something% discrepancy, which is somewhat concerning.
Of course, and I certainly appreciate the challenge that this poses to the members of the committee and average Canadians as well, in terms of understanding whether the food and the fish that they're eating is accurately labeled, and if they order something, is that what they're getting? I think I can state quite clearly that from a CFI perspective, we have a very good understanding of where along the supply chain that for which we have the mandate to regulate, where there are non-compliances. And through partnerships, as I mentioned earlier, we can enhance our knowledge and enhance our ability to take additional steps in partnership with regulatory agencies in the provinces to undertake any necessary follow-up. It's not perfect, but it's the system that we have. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to work together to be able to deal with this issue of misrepresentation in food.
Thank you, Mr. Hanley. We'll now go to Mr. Zimmer for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just had a question. I hope I say your name right, Ms. Switucha. I probably said it wrong, but my apologies. A simple question, though, on the consultation that you referred to earlier, the 120-day one on this specifically. And how was it conducted? Who was invited to participate? Was it in person or was it Zoom? And how was the general consultation conducted? And I know that's a lot to answer in 60 seconds, but do your best.
Thank you very much. The consultation to which I referred in August of 2021 was an online consultation that was open to anyone to participate in. There was a discussion paper that was prepared between all three departments. This was posted online on all of our websites, as well as the Consulting Canadians webpage for the Government of Canada. So,
and how many actually did participate?
We received a total of 150 submissions, some of them using the questionnaire that was provided in the consultation paper. Others were provided more generally in terms of emails to us as well.
Okay, thank you. I'd like a detailed synopsis or kind of what that looked like, if you could provide that to committee, and I'll pass the rest of my time to Mr. Perkins. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you, witnesses, for this very interesting testimony. I'd like to follow up quickly on the excellent questions by Mr. Hardy and Morrissey. You mentioned that the CFIA, the government, is studying or sampling 4,000 products a year. Is that 4,000 where you get the 92%?
No, this is our regular surveillance that we undertake to ensure that that fish is not contaminated with either pathogens or chemicals. It's not related to the targeted study that we did in 2019-2020 for misrepresentation. That is a very focused study on a particular issue versus our regular responsibility for monitoring the safety of fish that's eaten in Canada.
Not a regular study, thank you. The 9 species that you mentioned you sampled in that study, would you be surprised to learn that in the Oceania report they found that butterfish was often sold as escolar, which is a difficult fish for humans, cod as haddock and pollock, which is much cheaper, halibut, my personal favorite, sold as haddock flounder, or was haddock flounder or turbot, much cheaper, and unbelievably, wild-caught Pacific salmon was actually farmed Atlantic salmon, not even the same species and not even wild. So is that the same type of finding that your team got?
I'm not surprised at all by Oceana's findings. I think they have done some very good work in terms of looking into this problem. As I mentioned earlier, I think we have to keep in mind the parameters of our study and the parameters of that done by Oceana. While the differences seem very stark, I think there are probably some differences in the way that we did our studies and how we compared the results.
Oceana found, probably similar to you, about 22% of retail was actually mislabeled, and they used your standards of the fish classifications, 200 species, for example, classified as snapper, which seems confusing to me. And it was all DNA tested at an independent lab, so I think it's a pretty valuable study. Have you, or has the government ever considered labeling for farmed salmon, farmed fish, and aquaculture fish, and also a distinction between those farmed in Canada and those farmed abroad?
So the method of that is falls within the area of sustainability and not something that the CFIA has an authority to do. But we do absolutely require origin indicated on products that are sold in Canada, and that falls within our mandate.
Some of those confusing origin things earlier, and you said there was a high degree of compliance, but you could not answer what the origin of any of these things were, and you only go back one. I don't know how you get a high degree of compliance when you don't go the full international supply chain. Can you help me understand that?
When I speak to high degree of compliance, I'm speaking about compliance against the regulations and the law in Canada. And currently the law specifies that there are specific things for the health and safety of Canadians that must be on a label. Some of those other items are voluntary claims, and that is not something that there are currently requirements for, but they do, under the Food and Drugs Act and the regulations, still need to be truthful and not misleading.
So
Thank you. We'll now go. Your time is up, Mr. Perkins. Actually, it's gone over. Mr. Callaway, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello to colleagues, and thank you to the witnesses today. Some great questions, great dialogue. I'd also like to thank MP Demen for putting forward this study, and of course, MP Morrissey for his work on this topic in the last session. I know it's important to him as well. So throughout this conversation and some of the research that I did, I understand that CFI did its own study of fish misrepresentation in 2019. So I'm wondering if you can unpack what you found, and also I'm interested to know if you're planning to do more studies as well. So 2 questions. What did you find? And take some time to unpack that if you'd like. And also, are you planning to do more studies?
Thank you very much. As I indicated earlier, in 2019 and 2020, we undertook our first look into fish misrepresentation using the funding that we were provided in the food policy. And we took a very targeted approach, looking at this 9 species that we knew had a high likelihood of being misrepresented. We undertook sampling at various levels along the supply chain. So we took samples of foods that were imported. We took samples of foods that were domestically, or fish that was domestically produced. And then we also went into retail and sampled fish that was packaged in the stores as well as that's the fish that's sold in stores from processors. And as I mentioned, in that particular study, we found that 8% of those samples were non-compliant. Now, we have continued doing that work. So in the past year, we have followed up with additional sampling and testing using the same parameters. And we're finding almost similar, almost identical results, whereby domestic processed foods are mislabeled at around 4%, imports at around 5%, and at retail, approximately 12%. So consistent over the past few years. And we'll continue to monitor this through our targeted projects as we move forward, because this is an area that, and we're very concerned about misrepresentation. And with the help of these other organizations, we can add to our intelligence to really, further investigate the problem.
Thanks very much. Throughout this session, this meeting, I've heard in one form or another from a variety of folks from different parties speak to authenticity, and determining authenticity. So I wonder if you can walk through what happens when tests show that a product is misrepresented or mislabeled.
So we undertake testing through DNA analysis to determine the species of any animal-based products, so fish included. And when we find non-compliance, we have available to us, the CFIA inspectors have a toolkit of actions available to them to use. Many of them will, depending on the history of the specific company or client in case, if they have a history of non-compliance, they have a variety of actions available to them. They can seize the product, they can detain it, they can require that the product be relabeled, and in very serious situations when there's a long history of non-compliance, we have the ability now under the Safe Food for Canadians regulations to seize their license, causing them to cease operation. And as always, we have the mechanism to be able to prosecute as well.
What's the level of, do you have like stats on terms of if someone doesn't comply? Do you have, yearly stats that are accumulated to determine what measures were taken or what percentage of people were offside and that faced accountability measures as a result of being somewhat of a bad actor?
The CFIA publishes all of its enforcement decisions on our website, and that information can be easily found through that means. Yes, we do.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I don't know how, am I done?
Oh, you're done.
Okay,
thank you,
like
Mr.
Thank you.
Callaway. We'll now go to Madame Desbiens for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always too short. Thank you to our witnesses that are spending 2 hours with us. We do appreciate it. That's a lot to ask of you, but thank you so much. I would like to come back to something very down to earth. All of the Canadian economy, whether it's fisheries, and there's also a value of authenticity, and we know this within the Saint-Laurent. This is very important in the estuary that we have a really important resource there, and that we're losing things because of the dates of opening of the fisheries that doesn't really for example, for the traditional fishing that is done for the capelon. And so this is something that is really affecting fishing in the St. Lawrence and the Maritimes. So how can we work to be able to decentralize part of their activities? Mr. Burns.
I'm sorry to the member. I'm not sure I quite follow your question in terms of decentralizing.
Well, we have legislative procedures that make that the right to fish for capelon is in June. And the reality, it's really in April that it should be fished. Because it's a federal, maybe they're really not aware of the reality. So because of that, we're not able to put out the licenses at the right dates for this category of fishers who have a really authentic local way of fishing. We'd like to be able to preserve that.
Sorry to have not understood your question the first time, but I do understand it now. I unfortunately I don't have the Capelin scientific survey information readily available right now, and this is something that I think we would have to follow up with you on.
I would really appreciate that, Mr. Burns. That would be wonderful. Because maybe another last question, if I have enough time, I'm not sure I do. But there is in Quebec a real will to be able to manage our own marine resources. And the DFO, is there an openness to that? Or
question as an official that I would be able to speak to. My role is to administer the fisheries management framework in the manner it's currently structured.
I understand. Well, thank you so much.
We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Following up from Mr. Perkins' question to Ms. Swatuka, really need to figure out how to actually pronounce your name properly. I apologize. But I'm wondering if you can expand a little on, you mentioned 4,000 seafood items are tested each year. Can you tell us, to get a sense of the total volume of fish that we're talking about that are coming into Canada, to get a sense of the scale? And also, how does this compare to other food items in CFIA, that CFIA inspects?
Thanks for the question. I can't speak to the volume. I'm sorry that that's information I don't have available at the moment. And in terms of our sampling of other food products, that's something that I will have to follow up with the committee on with further information.
Thank you, because for me it's just out of context, so to have some further information would be really important to understand what it is that we're talking about. Another question. Thank you. Another question can go either to the CFIA or the DFO, but to my knowledge, the USA has a secretariat set up between 19 different agencies to help enforce traceability standards. It's great to see the CFIA and the DFO here together today. Can you speak to other departments that would need to be involved in Canada throughout the supply chain to make sure that we get this right? And do you think that we would benefit from a secretariat similar to that that we see in the US?
I can start that answer, and would ask my colleague Adam to follow up if there's something else. My understanding that secretariat in the U.S. was struck under the leadership and the mandate for fisheries management in the United States, and pulled in agencies and departments from across the spectrum. And so difficult for me to comment further, but from CFIA's perspective, we appreciate the participation of our colleagues from DFO, as well as agriculture and agri-food. And I think we could potentially benefit from the participation of maybe environment but I think for the most part, you've got the partners that are needed to be able to work with this. In addition, of course, to the other levels of government that are equally responsible for parts of this issue.
Thank you. I'll try to see if I have time for one last question.
You actually don't.
Okay, thank you. It was worth a try.
I'm sorry. Oh, definitely. If you don't try, you'll never know. We now go to Mr. Perkins for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned again to CFIA that you've got this escalating form of sort of sanction or penalty when companies aren't complying that go from, I guess, a stern letter up to license seizure, if I heard you correctly. How many licenses have you seized?
It's my understanding that since our Safe Food for Canadian regulations came into force, there have been multiple for all foods, but for fish and seafood specifically, we've had 20 licenses that have been either suspended or revoked since 2019.
Thank you for that. As part of your consultation, obviously you're studying all the various different forms of boat-to-plate systems around the world. The EU, we've talked a lot about the EU and their systems. What do you think are gaps in our systems that the EU does much better that you think should be considered here?
Thank you for the question. And Mr. Chair, I can only speak from the perspective of my expertise, which is for food safety. And when we compare the food safety objectives and requirements between Canada and the EU, they're very similar. We both follow the international standards of Codex Alimentarius, and we both have relatively new and modern food safety requirements for foods that are imported, exported, and traded within our country. So we align very closely from a food safety perspective.
Thank you. Is it part of your study, if we were expanding the boat-to-plate system and the recommendations that you will make, to understand the financial impact on each part of the supply chain of implementing a higher level of traceability from harvesters through to processors to retailers?
That's certainly a very interesting part of the issue, and you know, from a CFI perspective, when we're developing any sort of regulatory proposal, we are required to look at the cost benefit of any new regulatory proposal. Beyond that, for non-regulatory proposals or ones that are done through policy, that's why we work very closely with our colleagues from DFO and Agriculture and Agri-Food to understand the economic benefits as well as the impacts on the industry.
Thank you. I'm still trying to understand how far back in the chain we go now, because if we're going to recommend as a committee improvements to the system, it seems that, if I'm understanding right, DFO is only looking at certain aspects of both domestic catch and origin, authenticity, and only a few very specific countries. And CFIA's not looking very far back in the supply chain, back only one. And really, is it fair to say that you're really just focused on testing the quality of what's coming in as opposed to the authenticity back?
No, in fact, that's incorrect. If I could correct that statement, CFIA's responsibility goes all the way back to where the food originated within Canadian jurisdiction. So in the context of fish and seafood, traceability has to occur all the way as the boat, because they are subject to licensing. So any company, if to put it plainly, that is licensed with CFIA for its activities, we have the responsibility for that oversight. And when I refer
so you have
to
no way, I have limited time. So you have no way to audit beyond the Canadian company going back. You're not auditing regularly to see whether what's being told to us or to Canadian consumers is true from the origin.
We do foreign country audits on an annual basis. Those are always based on various factors, but legally we cannot take action against any company outside of Canada. So that's why we work closely with the foreign competent authorities, the other governments, to share that information so that they may consider whether they need to take action. But we do foreign audits in all types of foods around the world.
Thank you. My time? I'm watching a clock here, so.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. It's only about 8 seconds left. So we'll go now to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Yeah, I'll take the 8 seconds then. How about that? Ms. Watuka, you know, now your last answer confused me a little bit, because I asked earlier about auditing back, and you said, well, no, you know, that's should happen someplace else, and now you're telling me you do it. But I do get the impression, and by the way, you've had the enormous good fortune to be first amongst our witnesses, so you've had a lot of questions that probably don't land appropriately at your feet. But who else has a piece of this in Canada? You know, who else should we invite to these hearings to get the complete picture? Because we need to either identify gaps if they exist, or simply a lack of coordination, one of the two. But, you know, I'm not sort of comfortable so far that we've got the full landscape covered properly. Should be here.
Thanks for your question. Thanks for your question. And I think the confusion may lie in the use of the word audit, because it does mean something specific to CFIA, and in the context of your line of questioning, perhaps I misunderstood your intent.
I think the real substance of my question is, who should we be talking to get the full picture here?
I think industry is very much a player in this conversation. I would recommend that the national associations representing the fishing industry participate.
We'll do that, but I mean, this is all about ensuring that we're getting honest products properly labeled. And I don't necessarily see a voluntary process through industry groups as being kind of the assurance that we need. What other government ministries should we be talking to? Maybe I should be more precise.
You have before you, I think, the two main players in this issue related to the management of the fisheries in Canada and ensuring that Canadians are protected against misrepresentation and food safety.
Well, you mentioned that other levels of government have a role. So the provincial, municipal governments, do they have a role? And if so, what are they and how are they coordinated?
I can't speak to how they're coordinated, but I know that they're very important players for us at the federal level, because the food safety mandate and the responsibility rests in all three levels of government. So
that's back to the food safety angle, but there are other angles here that we need to be also satisfied about. Mr. Burns, you know, we saw in British Columbia over the last few years a major processor closed in Prince Rupert and moved to Alaska. And I'm kind of wondering if in your observation, if the loss of processing capability or capacity opens the door for higher risk of misrepresentation, mislabeling, et cetera, et cetera. You know, do you know where our catch is going that's landed at a dock somewhere in BC?
So DFO's jurisdiction does end at the wharf, and so you know, as I'm sure you are, as I'm certain you're aware, we have dockside monitoring activities and a variety of measures to ensure compliance from the boat to the wharf. After the wharf, our jurisdiction ends. And so I wouldn't have any information at my disposal to assist in responding further to your question regarding.
I appreciate that.
Capacity.
Thank you. Well, it would appear then that we've identified, even in our first session here, quite a number of gaps that we need to do the deeper dive. So again, I would like to thank Ms. Debian for suggesting this and the number of meetings, because it looks like we're going to need them to get to the bottom of what's going on. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is going to be to both witnesses, Mr. Burns and Ms. Swatucha. There seems to be gaps here that DFO does not monitor or regulate seafood coming into Canada. CFIA only samples or does random audits. So there doesn't seem to be a sense of establishing any traceability system to support conservation or labor conditions in other countries off our waters. Do you see how the eliminating IUU, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries, through traceability could benefit conservation and mitigate unacceptable labor conditions in how Canadians buy their food?
Mr. Chair, I think the information that the member is seeking falls outside of CFI's mandate.
Whose mandate would that fall under?
Chair, I mean, Chair, I can speak to the area of DFO's responsibilities that do touch on what the member's asking, but don't respond directly, admittedly, relate to DFO's work through international bodies, regional fisheries management organizations, to address illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing activities. For example, in the Pacific, DFO has significant assets that are engaged in both the governance within these international bodies to make sure the rules are such that illegal activities
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
are being addressed.
Thank you. I think most of the members are aware of DFO's and Canada's cooperation with international organizations to try and stop IUU, but will a traceability program prevent IUU caught fish from reaching Canadian dinner tables or Canadian markets?
So that would be outside. What products are coming into Canada is outside of DFO's area of jurisdiction. So I couldn't speak to that. It certainly reduces our activities in RFMOs reduce
then
the
again,
amount
whose jurisdiction is it for those seafood products coming into Canada?
CFIA has the responsibility to ensure that any food that's imported into Canada meets Canadian requirements for food safety. And so for
safety,
that,
but what about conservation, labor standards, and so on? Whose responsibility would that fall under?
I can confirm that those two areas of marine conservation and stewardship do not fall within CFIA's mandate.
Nobody knows? That's, I find that mind-boggling. I want to move on to another question here. Ms. Swatucha, sorry to target on you a little bit, and it's not targeting you, it's the system. The sampling focus that you mentioned, where you found 92% compliance or only 8% sampling, I'm just questioning why you would sample at the top end of the leading end of the system. It seems like you'd be sampling the top end of a river system where the water is quite pure, but when you look at the Fraser River after it's past municipal effluent outflows and so on, it's not so pure. If you started at the tail end, would you not be able to trace back to where the problems are much better than sampling at the top end when it's actually quite pure still?
I don't disagree with your observation. I think, though, the answer lies in the jurisdiction that CFI has in our ability to do that oversight and surveillance. So our mandate is focused.
Excuse me, do you not have the ability to sample at near the final end of the supply chain?
Our authority for sampling lies within the responsibility to ensure that food that is traded in between provinces or exported or imported is safe to eat. So it's difficult to say whether we would or wouldn't, depending on the destination of that product. But from solely a conservation area, no, we would not.
Okay, thank you. One quick question here before I run out of time.
You're out of time, Mr. Arnold. I'm sorry. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 5 minutes or less, please.
Chair, my question's to CFIA. In the areas of wholesale processed product, retail and food services, which of those categories would experience the most misrepresentation of the product?
I can only answer that question from the recent study that we conducted. And as mentioned, the samples that we picked up at retail, so those are foods that are actually packaged in the store, had the highest level of non-compliance.
And you do, as my understanding, you do not do food service? Food service.
We do in certain circumstances, depending on the level of trade that food service undertakes. So generally speaking, no. But there are, very small examples of, some food service businesses that do trade interprovincially that we would have jurisdiction for. But those are very limited.
Okay. You referenced 20 licenses were revoked or suspended. Could you give us an example? What would be the size of the operation? What would it be doing? Just pick an example. I'm curious.
I don't have that information at hand. I'm sorry. We would need to follow up on the.
Could
on
you
the question,
provide
Mr.
the
Chair.
Could you provide the committee with a breakdown of the or define who the 20 licenses were? What would be the face of that identity, if you could?
We'll do our best.
My question, I believe, goes to DFO, and as follow-up on some of the questions that was given here to questioning by Mr. Perkins and Madame Desbain. How could you explain to the committee the situation where somebody purchased what was labeled as local cod and then found out when they got inside it was sourced from Russia? So how did it get missed? That's a fairly substantive difference. So if DFO only does it from the boat to the wharf and CFIA goes in, I'm going to direct the question to DFO. How would a situation like that occur? Please explain.
In that instance, I believe it is a food labeling issue. So I think my colleagues from CFIA could probably respond to that particular question.
Thanks
Waiting
for the
an
question.
answer.
Sorry, thanks for. Sorry, there's a bit of feedback there. This is a problem. We don't dispute that, and I think within the authorities that we currently have, the CFIA monitors and does very specific oversight of importers of fish and seafood products. We use all of the tools that we have under the law to be able to do that regulatory oversight and take enforcement. But we can't be everywhere all the time, and so a lot of our work is risk-based and based on intelligence.
But then it would be fair for me to conclude then there's gaps in the system that's allowing this, and that's a substantive gap that would allow that misrepresentation. My question to Mr. Burns, you referenced a robust harvest enforcement regime under DFO from catch certification. Could you elaborate and describe to us what that robust harvest enforcement regime is that ensures that all the product is what it's supposed to be?
Yeah, so if you're referring, and I think you are, if you're referring to the enforcement and the post-certificate auditing regime, we have a specific team of conservation and protection officers whose role is to indeed perform an audit and verification function, which occurs after the certificates have been issued, and is intended to assess the chain of custody within that entity in order to ensure that it is indeed a fish product that has come from the particular vessel identified, the particular license identified, that license was valid and active, that there was quota available, all of those sorts of things to ensure that it was indeed sourced from a regulated fishery, and so that audit and verification process occurs on a regular basis following the issuance of the certificate, because in some instances those certificates need to be issued within 2 hours because of the live nature of some of the products that are being exported.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. We'll now go to Madame Desbain for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci.
Thank you to my colleagues who have taken up some of my concerns. I do appreciate that. You were talking earlier about the fact that you were counting on the different infrastructure within infrastructure such as the MAPAC in Quebec and municipalities. So my question is that do these different organizations know really the levels of government know what role they actually need to play? Do they have directives? Do you have precise directives to give them with respect to traceability? So where do you stop and where do they start in their activities?
Thanks very much for the question. And I can tell you for any food safety investigation, which does include misrepresentation as well, we have very good cooperation with our provincial and territorial colleagues. When we're part of an investigation, we share information between each level of government on a regular basis. And many of the recalls and notices that you see are the result of interjurisdictional cooperation, because we're all working together for the purpose of protecting Canadians and public health.
So can you tell me within that framework, what is missing? Have you identified what the gaps are, and how can you really, is it resources, is it labor? What exactly is missing to really be able to do a better sampling? So what can you tell us on how things could be improved?
Thank you very much for the question. And as I mentioned earlier, I think, it's fair to say that CFIA cannot be everywhere and be everything all at once. And so we do rely on those partnerships. It's, a complex waterfront, excuse the pun, of the issue. And, I can't speak to, the funding for the gaps, but the funding that we have received through Budget 2019 has allowed us to expand and enhance our activities for investigating misrepresentation and fraud.
Thank you. We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Ms. Swatuka, I always appreciate, every time I change it, I always appreciate a good pun, so thank you for that. My question is around, to my knowledge, 1/6 of food illnesses in Canada are traced back to seafood. Has the CFIA looked at other jurisdictions, such as in the EU, to see how food illnesses from seafood have changed as they implement stronger regulations?
Thanks very much for the question. And information like that is always used by CFIA as part of our risk analysis. And so we always look at other jurisdictions, their findings, their results, to inform our risk analysis when it comes to food protection or protection of Canadians and food safety.
And just a follow-up question to Mr. Arnold's question. It sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that Canada is willfully providing a market for illegal products due to these jurisdictional gaps. I'm wondering if you can confirm how much money, and now I'm realizing it may not go to you, but I'm wondering if we can confirm how much money DFO is spending each year to support international partners to address illegal, unregulated, and oh, darn it, the last U has slipped my mind. IUU. Unreported. Thank you very much.
So the specific funding amounts aren't something that I could speak to directly, but certainly we're engaged in a variety of international forum, both, as I say, from a policy perspective, making sure the rules are tight, but also from an enforcement perspective with fisheries officers and the Canadian Coast Guard playing a role in ensuring that those IUU, I'll just use the acronym, activities are being stopped internationally.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Do you think we could get this information in writing?
I won't be able to commit that we'll be able to provide you the specific amounts. It's not necessarily something that's tracked specifically in that manner, but we'll provide you what we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. That concludes our rounds of questioning. We have about 2 minutes left, only enough time to really say thank you to our witnesses, Mr. Burns, Ms. Swatuka, and of course, Ms. Twardek, who had very little to do in the question round, and that's probably a good thing. Nobody tormenting you. But again, a big thank you to our witnesses. Thank you to clerk and the members of the committee, and of course our analysts. and of course the wonderful people doing the translation services for us here today. We'll see you all again at the next FOPO committee meeting. Thank you one and all. Have a good day.
Thank you.